And I think that it comes back to capitalism too. Like when anyone mentions the socialism word, or they're like, oh, well, look at Venezuela, look at all these examples of where it didn't work. And I say, okay, yeah, and we can see all these examples of communism that didn't work. Capitalism isn't working either. Like, you can't defend capitalism by looking at socialism that didn't work, because capitalism is the same. There are people living in tents on our street. How is that different than the socialist countries where people are starving? Our people are starving. Our people have no medical care. It's the same thing. And it's not about the system, it's about the implementation and who is implementing it. So the socialist countries, they put in leaders who are corrupt. Same as here. It's the exact same thing. It's about who is leading these systems. It's not the system itself. There's nothing bad about socialism when we take care of each other. There's nothing inherently bad about that. Taking
Well,
care of each other is what we should do as human beings.
And I
this is
100% agree with that. My point has
is
always been is that if we can't seem to put that system in place, if we can't seem to overcome the logic that we've lived with for all these years of our existence, then I said, then the other solution is through education. Let's teach children how to succeed. So in the example we started with the foster care kids who are bounced around the system, can we improve that? Because those kids are coming out like the horrifying abuse you experienced in your life left you, even though you're you now and this amazing person, the chances were you probably wouldn't have been this amazing person. The odds are you beat the odds. The reality is you beat the odds.
Yeah.
So then my point goes, this is where I'm really arriving or landing at, is if we were able to somehow mitigate this crap system at a young age through education, would we have more intelligent, super intelligent people harnessing all their abilities, and then the billionaires would have more to compete with, and would that ultimately spread the wealth?
which the thing about it is, and I've heard you say this argument, and it makes sense as long as you accept the fact, as long as you ignore the fact that we are a finite resource world. Okay? Okay. And so if we're a finite resource world, we actually measure how much resource we use. And there is something called, there's something called global, the phrase escapes me now, but it's the day of the year in which we use a year's worth of natural resource. The earth can only replicate the natural resource that goes into all the products and services that we use. Okay. It does it at a certain rate, right? And so how much resource can the earth produce in a year? Well, what we're doing is we're using so much resource that by July, we use a full year's natural resource. And then for the rest of the year, the remaining 5.5 months or so of the year, we are drawing down the natural resources that are going to be available for future generations. That's what we're doing. So we need more than one Earth to sustain the amount of natural resources we're using now. So the context is we are a finite resource planet, and we are overusing the resources and draining, and going to create a circumstance where future generations don't have enough because we're draining the capacity of the planet. We're exceeding the capacity of the planet to sustain this. Okay, so the solution that you're talking about is not making the average person more competitive so that they can consume more. No, the solution is that one, all of us need to consume, well, as a humanity, we need to consume less. Most of the reduction in the consumption is not you and I. It is the billionaire class.
Yeah.
They are so over-consuming. They are consuming mass. 50, 60% of all consumption is the 1%. Let's understand that, right? That needs to crater. That needs to stop, right? And there needs to be a sharing. The matriarchy, the circle. This is the only planet all of us have. Forget about what Elon Musk wants to do on Mars and now the moon. This is the only planet that we have. And therefore, all of us should have access to the resources we need to sustain ourselves. And what capitalism has done is create an incentive structure that some people get the resources and other people don't. And the proof is in our life expectancy statistics. I want everyone who hears this conversation to go into your chat box, your AI, and pull up life expectancy in the United States by income. And what you will find, unbelievable, a beautiful chart that starts at the lowest 1% earners, the lowest 5% earners, the lowest 10% earners, and then it's every 10%, all the way up to the highest 10% earners, to the highest 5% earners, and the highest 1% earners. Okay. And one thing that you're going to see that's consistent from the bottom all the way to the top is that the more money you make, the longer you live. Yeah, let's be clear about that. The more money you make, the longer you live in America. That's how bad this is getting. And what also blew my mind is the biggest gap in life expectancy. You would figure it's somewhere in the lower part. The biggest gap in life expectancy in the United States is between people who earn in the top 5% and people who earn in the top 1%. Yeah, I didn't stutter. You wouldn't believe that for men in the top 1% live 3 years longer than men in the top 5%. Yeah. So when I say 99, the 99% is us and the 1% is them, yes, this is where it's manifested. They live 3 years longer, even if you're in the top 5%. And for women, it's 2 years. For 2 years, women in the top 5%, in the top 1% live 2 years longer than women in the top 5%. So this is where we are, right? We are literally in the competition, free market capitalism. The cost of losing is you live less. You, your family, your children. It's statistically and factually true. This is horrible. History will look at this period of time and say this is worse than medievalism because we can avoid all of this. It's not technology. It's not innovation. It's not productivity. We are simply choosing to do less for some people and so much more for certain people. It's just wasting. Most of that resource is wasting. That's how awful this time is.
I would love to see the stats of like Norway and Denmark, to see
Totally different.
the graph. Yeah,
Totally different.
That would.
And Diana, I'm glad you bring up Scandinavia because see, on top of these myths, we talk about socialism, we talk about communism, we talk about Putin and Russia and China and all this other stuff. Yeah. Do you know something? We have for over 20 years done something called the Global Happiness Study.
Yep.
It's a deep, comprehensive analysis on a national level of who is the happiest populations in the world. And guess who has won the happiest country on earth the last 10 years in a row? Finland. Finland. It happens to be a border country to Russia. Right. Okay. Now, my heart breaks for the Finns because unfortunately we've convinced them to join NATO. So we'll see how long they maintain their happiness now that we're trying to make them an enemy of Russia. Because for the last 10 years, when they were neutral, right, they were the happiest country on earth. There's a reason for that, right? They have a free democracy there, even though they're on the border of Russia, right? So yeah, we need to get away from this propaganda bias about capitalism good, socialism, communism bad, America good, Russia bad. No, we're only good if the average American can achieve the American dream. And the thing about it is 50 years ago, we could. Now the middle class can't. That's not America being good. That's America exploiting their own people. Full stop.
Yep.
Well, I'm just going to say, if you look at Jeff Bezos today, after he left the CEO position of Amazon, and he has all the time in the world on his hands, he's become buff. He's worked out. So I'm sure he's increased his life expectancy by some time doing that. I'm sure when he was sitting in the boardroom eating whatever they brought him, he wasn't going to live forever. So again, through education, the whole idea of healthy living and the whole idea of finding inner peace, however you do it, the whole idea of just building that narrative in your mind. We are not, when people say there's no problem with teenage suicide, they're lying. What they're doing is they're mitigating the reporting. They're not telling you how many kids committed suicide in each school in each community. They're just saying we no longer have this problem because we're no longer reporting on it. It's kind of like Donald Trump fired the jobs report guy. We no longer have a jobs problem. It's okay. And I always said to that alter ego, when Barack Obama in his exiting days said we created 18 million jobs, I said they were all crap. I had to work 4 jobs just to get my kids home from Thailand. So thanks for that 18 million jobs. I had 4 of them. And you know what? I was sleeping in my car 2 hours a day going to the next one. So there's this whole thing of education and build. That's my point is let's start from the beginning. And then when we talk about the environment and the finite resources, I always use the example of Tesla. He brought up Elon Musk. No one really cared if the cars were electric. They were fun to drive. And even Ford got it wrong. They committed $35 billion to building electric cars, and they just now did a big write-off on the whole investment because their cars were still clunky and Teslas were still fun to drive. So there's a lack of interest on the environment and the finite resources thing that I believe strongly in what Kevin's saying. But can we build that interest through education? Can we build that understanding through education? I really think I didn't know everyone's going to say I'm crazy because it's not going to happen in the traditional K through 12 system. But if we created online successful living courses and even made them incentive based, and then we covered the topic of possibly psychedelics, bringing you to some level of inner peace after you've been screwed royally from the day you were born until you were 18, and then you got the real kick in the nuts when you got kicked to the curb for good. Then, and you had, but though during that time where you're living in some stranger's home who's telling you don't eat till 6 o'clock and here's a little bit you get because the state hasn't given me enough money, then during that time when you're sitting there and you're learning something online about successful living, when you're finally on your own, would that help? Would that initiate that whole idea of seeking out some sort of psychedelic therapy to get you through that 18-year period?
I think the education conversation could be a whole nother podcast episode. Yeah, I mean, you look at Scandinavian countries again and their education system, it is very different than here. The kids are not sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day, taking exams and memorizing stuff. That has been shown over and over again not to be a great way to educate the population. But that's a whole separate point. The point in America is that the education system benefits the people who are already rich. So the poor kids get the worst education in the country because of the taxation system and how schools are funded. So the poor kids start off with a shitty education from K to 12, if they even make it to 12, and then they can't go to college because it's so freaking expensive. So only the rich kids get to go to college unless you're already really smart and you might get a scholarship, but the percentage of poor kids who actually get scholarships and get to go to higher education is so small. So you're already benefiting the rich kids just in the education system. So those rich kids are perpetuating the systems because the system benefits them. So it starts at grade school. The inequality starts at grade school, and that has to change for sure.
Yeah, I really do believe that has changed. But my biggest question is if that changed, would we really see some sort of redistribution of wealth? Would we really see a significant less billionaires and more millionaires? And I agree that we need to address the environment. And I agree we need to address the finite resources that we're working with. Because it won't affect us. I mean, it won't affect me. I'll be gone long before any of you guys. But, and it probably won't even affect my kids, but their kids are probably going to be in trouble. And there is that logic that we really need to address it. But when we take on the things that you've been through and the experiences you've had, we can really change a lot of that with an understanding of how to find inner peace in your life because you are the person that found that inner peace but you were the person that didn't quit, even though you thought you were going to quit. And you convinced the person that said, I can't even get you in here for 6 months. And when you said to them that heart-wrenching statement, sure, I'll make that appointment for 6 months from now, just don't expect me to be here, that they did something else. So I I don't disagree with Kevin at all. I love the idea of really addressing some of these bigger